You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a very informative episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul, and with me today is Mr. PJ KirkPatrick. Now, you may have heard him in the past on the show talking about counter-UAS solutions. And today we're going to be talking about how one SAR mission went wrong. And it brought a problem to light. How are drone operators really conducting SAR missions? Well, it's one of those questions that really kind of bug me because it's one of those things where everyone says they're a SAR operator. You know, the search and rescue group on Facebook has, I think, 8,000 members, something ridiculous. And even when I went into the SAR group to ask them, hey, you know, what do you guys think the proper protocol for search and rescue missions are? Few people actually said something, and I'm not sure if that's because I wrote it or my Drone U logo is my profile picture or what, but it made me think, if drone operators are not educated in how to actually conduct a SAR mission, kind of like, let's say, based on science, then how are we sure that drone operators are even helping? How are we sure that we're making a difference? So today with me, PJ is going to talk about how his mission went wrong and what he figured out and what he needs to share with all of you to ensure that SAR missions are conducted properly, because there is a way that can really change lives. Have you ever wondered, if I go to a SAR operation and take 800 photos, how am I going to review all these photos? Oh, I'll make it into a one big ortho mosaic, we'll be good. Well, you got to process it. That's hours. Oh, I'm going to do a grid mission. I'll look through the photos. Your eyes are going to cover that? I think that's questionable. So is there a better way? I think that there is. PJ, hey, thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what happened. You were working a SAR mission. Now, again, you're with Terra Vigilis up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You're also Drone U Elite member running the Milwaukee location here coming up after the fly-in. But tell us, what happened?
So we were contacted. We have a very strong relationship with local law enforcement outside of Milwaukee, one of the suburbs. And we were contacted about 5 days after they conducted their own full search with helicopters, cadaver dogs. They searched the entire area. So we were contacted with the request to fly a drone, see if we can find the individual missing person. This wasn't a search and rescue mission. This was more of a search and recovery mission.
Gotcha. Because how many days did you say it was when you were finally called in?
This was 5 days post the initial missing person. But the missing person did leave a video to the family indicating that it could be a suicide.
So there is reason to believe that if it was a suicide and it's 5 days later, that maybe there may not be any thermal signatures. Is that right? So maybe using a thermal camera wouldn't even be the right choice at that time.
Correct. In this case, we opted not to use thermal for that very reason. One, it was in the wintertime, days before the temperatures were around 20 to 30 degrees. So 5 days post, thermal wouldn't have been helpful at that point.
So what did you guys end up doing?
We have a very unique team. So one of our principals on the team is actually a professional psychologist. So we were able to interview the family. We also talked with local law enforcement. So we wanted to focus our missions on where the information was leading us to. For example, they were able to tell us where the cadaver dogs had hits based on their experience, where they conducted searches that were very thorough. Because with the drone, we're limited on daylight and the amount of batteries and stuff like that. So we wanted to, focus on as few areas as possible.
Gotcha. So did they give you kind of a search area that they wanted you to look in? Or, I mean, it seems like they had done a wide search and they see you as valuable, but where did they deploy you?
So it was really all up to us. They told us where they went. And again, based on what we did is we started from ground zero. So we started at the residence and tried to make some guesses, if you will, the direction that the missing person may have left the residence, because that's where he was last seen. And from there, one of the principals is actually very familiar with the area. And so we were going to start with just searching the subdivision. but that would have taken all day. So we focused on other areas, 5 separate areas, and I could show those areas at a highlight. I won't be able to show like the exact locations, but for examples, I can use.
Yeah, sure. Let's see it. So while everyone is waiting for PJ, if you are listening to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or another platform, you may want to check out the YouTube version of this podcast because PJ is going to be showing us kind of the areas that they looked and what happened and why the way that we may believe someone went missing is not always the way, and how things can be right in front of our face and we just simply never know it. So, PJ, whenever you're ready, let's see it.
So this is a presentation that we put together. We've been asked to present to law enforcement groups, also at some conferences, law enforcement conferences. So what we did, these were the areas of interest that we originally identified. The area to the left is a reservoir. Up to the north is a golf course. The residence is in this area in the center of the screen. The yellow dot is an indicator of where the cadaver dogs had a hit. Kind of walked over some of the mission planning information. I don't know if this podcast is the right place to do this, but these are just some of the things that we do prior to the mission to make sure that one, it's safe, right? So when we do these mapping missions, we want to make sure that we're low enough to be able to have very clear images, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're not going to be flying into obstacles, as an example. So it's a balance, right? You have to maintain batteries life, right? They only last so long. So for this particular mission, I ended up going with 250 feet.
Gotcha. 250 feet in elevation.
Correct, AGL.
Gotcha.
Continue
on. So 250 feet AGL. How high do you think that typically is for most projects? You think that that's going to cover most search and rescue projects?
Not really. For the larger areas, this area was relatively confined. For a larger area, you may have to balance that with a higher elevation just so you can cover more ground. And one of the lessons learned in this, and I'll touch on it at the end of this, but if we were contacted by law enforcement that night, probably have used thermal at that point, but because of that delay, we weren't able to use thermal for that reason.
Gotcha.
But this slide just kind of has the original plan, which was to do the subdivision. This is ultimately what we did. We broke up the areas into 5 specific areas so that we could cover relatively closer area to the residents. Like I said, the temperatures were around 20 to 30 degrees that week. So the night that he left, we were told that he wasn't wearing a jacket. So we speculated if he would be closer based on that information. So here's some of the stats missions. We were able to cover about almost 400 acres, collected about 2,400 images. Total time in the air was almost an hour and elevation of 250 feet.
Gotcha.
What we tried to do is we tried to educate law enforcement because there's some people think that it's very easy as you're flying the drone to be able to find people, and it's actually kind of hard.
Like a live view, if you have like your second remote set up to a TV under a tent kind of thing, and everyone's watching the drone as you're flying.
Yep. So this is a simulation of the images that we've captured. We're traveling around 17 miles an hour was the drone flight. So you can kind of see that it's actually kind of difficult to pick out an individual. In this particular instance, it's a subdivision, so there's a lot of noise in the screen, right? So first thing we did after we collected all this data, we actually had to fall back to manually reviewing the images. And with the amount of images, one thing that we learned was there tended to be some eye fatigue as we were going through these images, thousands and thousands of images. The first thing we did is we tried to acclimate our eyes to what are we looking for, what does a human body look like at 250 feet? So here's some horses on the left-hand side of the screen and cows. So the image that we were kind of, looking for were around this size. And based on visually, manually looking through these images, myself and one of my other partners with the organization were manually looked at these. And these were some examples that we thought they were. For example, in this particular case, area of water. When I looked at this image, it kind of looked like someone was floating in the water with their arms out. But upon closer inspection, like zooming in, because one thing that was nice is these images were very clear once you zoomed in. So we were able to rule this one out. It was just a block of ice. This was an area actually that the partner identified. It looked like something was covered underneath this tree, but upon closer inspection, there's a boat up here. And so we looked at the size of the wheel relative to that and ruled that out just because of the size. Now, this area was interesting. This area actually piqued our curiosity just because of one, there's some red color that was highlighted in this area. And we also had some images that appeared to be, it could have been a skull. Now, we did know that there was actually cougar sightings in this area weeks prior, so there was some speculation that, maybe an animal got to the body. So we had contacted local law enforcement with this image so that we can get permission to walk onto the property. So I guess that's one takeaway that I would like operators to understand is not to do anything without direction from local law enforcement. For example, you do not want to walk onto anyone's personal property without local law enforcement escorting you, which is what we had done in this case.
So when you went out the next day, you had gone through all these photos, you're going through this eye fatigue and all that. Did you end up finding the person?
We did not end up finding this person. However, 4 to 5 weeks later, we received an email that they did locate the individual. And the email stated that they were located in plain sight. So prompted me to ask, where was he ended up located? And once I found out, I was confident we actually flew that area. So based on that, we went back to our images, and upon closer inspection, we actually found the individual, which was a complete failure in this particular process, right? So that was all lessons learned, is that we could not rely on the human eye to identify or locate an individual.
Which I think is important, because if you were given this opportunity, obviously maybe thermal would have helped if the police would have called you sooner, which I think is another takeaway for anyone who's in an operational command standpoint, that, with the right procedures and systems in place, you can bring in drones and other safety inspections at the same time. Again, I think it's also important to understand that so many drone pilots, go out in the world and say, I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. But are you really ready to help? Are you really ready to fail? Because, PJ, you said something that really struck me in our last conversation. And it was, you're sitting there, you're ready to do this search and rescue mission, and you're looking at the victim's mom, who's, relying on you and excited for you, that you're going to help, find her daughter. And you have to look her square in the eye and be able to be okay with never finding her daughter. And I think that's why this show is important, because we need to ask ourselves, is there a better way? Is there a better way to do search and rescue with drones? Is there a way that we can scan pictures and do mapping missions and zoom and live stream all at the same time? Is that even practical? It may not be. So PJ, let me ask you, what did you end up doing when you heard that they had found the person? You realized you didn't help at all. Now what do you do?
Yeah, so it was a failure, right? This mission I consider to be a failure. However, I looked at it as an opportunity. I'm very process oriented, right? So I was determined to figure out a process to potentially increase the success rate, which the long and short of it, I think I did. The first thing we tried to do, and I'll just skip past these images, this is just a reenactment of the location. And this is ultimately where the individual was found. So 5 weeks, when they said in plain sight, people were passing the location where this individual was for 5 weeks, and it happened to be behind a brick wall at the entrance of the subdivision. So I drove down this road. I remember it. And when I drove down it, I was looking straight ahead, and I never turned my head.
So wait, for 5 weeks, people were literally driving next to, like, within 10 feet of a dead body for 5 weeks?
Correct.
Wow.
So the first thought we had was because so many images, right, that eye fatigue, we thought maybe if we use Pix4D, broke the images into a grid format so we can reduce the images. In this example, we went from 596 images to 160, but you're still relying on that human eye factor, right? And also, as you pointed out, it took hours to process this data. So if this was a search and rescue mission, time is a factor. In this particular example, we did have time, but a search and rescue mission, to process those images would just take way too much time. So one of the other ideas that we had was, maybe if we can come up with a program that would, scan the images and look at a color spectrum, that might help. So I went into one of the groups that I'm a part of, and I just happened to run across this gentleman that was posting some information about a program that he was testing. The name of the individual is Shane Michaels. I had reached out to Shane and I asked him, hey, said, I have a bunch of data. I'd like to run it through your program if you're open to it. And he was more than happy to. He's out of Canada. And this wasn't his first mission. He's been tapped on the shoulder for many missions. So I'd asked him, I gave him the same information we had, which was very little. I didn't tell him what the individual was wearing or the location. Just ran the data through his program. And what his program does is it scans each image, and it takes about 3 seconds per image right now. And he was able to take a color profile of his blue jeans and said, okay, give me a hit for 8 pixels that have this color profile. And within 30 minutes, he was able to get a lat long of the individual.
So he had GPS location of the dead person that was found by police, but you technically found him, you just didn't know that you had found him.
We had the data that of the location he was at. We did not know that based on our process.
Until this software said, hey, he's right there.
Yeah, and Shane is amazing. We do this work voluntarily, right? We just want to help. This isn't like paid missions or anything. And Shane, he's doing this because he has a passion to help people. So I'm excited for you have an opportunity to speak with him when you get a chance, because he's fantastic.
We're going to do another show with Shane later when he has time. Just unfortunately, our schedules couldn't work out. But that's really interesting. So we're able to scan our photos based on color profiles. So we could scan for khakis if the person was wearing a helmet or, had their trusty little teddy bear with them. We could scan for that. I mean, this is truly powerful. So
he's also actually increasing that color profile database, right? So it's not just clothing, it's also skin tone. So if you know the skin tone of the individual you're looking for, that can be added as a color profile.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. So let me get this straight. And with this new software, we can use individual color palettes and profiles based on data that from search and rescue missions and data that we have in the past, and we can scan an image in 3 seconds. So this would change the way search and rescue missions are done. So we would go out, we would still fly this grid mission, right? Break it up into different missions, and then retrieve that data from the first mission and scan it while we're flying the second mission.
Sure. So I'll highlight what the current process is, because right now the software resides with Shane. So we upload the data so that Shane can download it and run it through his program, and that's time consuming, right? The end goal is to get this software on the laptops of local law enforcement. So the process would be to fly that mission, and as soon as that you need to replace the battery, you swap out the SD card, and immediately the program starts scanning while it's collecting data for the next set of data. So if we would have followed that process, this individual would have been found within 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's truly fascinating. I mean, this would change how drone operators could be helping with search and rescue missions. And I think it's also a good opportunity to educate command operatives as well, because, everyone thinks, eye in the sky, it's great, it can't hurt. Well, it can hurt if it's not done in the right way, right? It's just like the same thing, if your wife is super mad at you and you're trying to get her to be nice, it's not just, slap some flowers on the table and give her a card and smile. It's all about how you do it. It's a bad analogy, but it's true. It's all about how you go about these things. So everyone who's listening out there, I think it's important to understand this breakthrough and the power that it has. We're going to have Shane on the show, by the way, PJ, and I just want to, let you know, we're going to go over his plans on really scaling up that software and what it would take to get it in the hands of people who need it, because, people have said search and rescue with drones can take, hours of search down to minutes. And now we finally have that proof, but we know it's only possible if we do these drone missions in the right way.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm trying to do to help Shane, I asked him, hey, what can I do to help you? And so whenever I fly a construction project, a mapping mission, I'll just throw tennis balls out there, random number, and I'll give Shane the data. I'll say, okay, look for how many tennis balls in this set of data. And I'll fly at different elevations and, basically put his program through the test. At 400 feet, the results could be a little bit different based on the sensor that you're using.
Wow, very interesting. Oh, well, you know what? You bring up a good point. Is there a certain drone that we should be using for this? I mean,
the drone that we used was the Phantom 4 Pro.
Phantom 4 Pro. Yeah. Workhorse, ultimate tool.
It is truly a workhorse. And there's one thing I did want to kind of highlight. You touched on it a little bit earlier when we were talking about whether drone operators, do they have what it takes to do search and rescue missions. The one takeaway that operators should consider is, and you mentioned it, is there's definitely a level of humility or emotion that you get tied to these missions. So if you're new to this, you have to go into it prepared that there's going to be a level of emotion tied to it. Because I can tell you with that failure, I was not able to sleep because I could not figure out a process. So that was a failure that ended up being a good thing, because as a result, we were able to help come up with a process that I think is going to increase the success rate.
Gotcha. Well, PJ, I appreciate you, and I'm sure everyone else does, for sharing this information. And don't take it to heart, man. We're all learning. You're going to make this industry better for the information that you're sharing today. So get some good sleep tonight. All right, my friend, I really appreciate you being on the show. PJ, if we want to find out more about you, where do we go?
Feel free to check our website out, www.terravigilis.com.
Awesome. And what does Terra Vigilis mean again?
It's Latin for, translated loosely, to secure the earth.
Wow. On that bombshell, that is going to do it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a question, please upload that question. Go to askdroneu.com and let us know if you want to learn more about search and rescue. By the way, at the fly-in, we're going to be doing a couple mapping missions inside of the exercises. And it would be really cool to kind of try out and test out this software. We do have a search and rescue mission with thermography. So again, another perfect example where we could try out this software and showcase to you guys how it is useful. If you want to check out the fly-in, go to droneuflyin.com. Again, thank you everyone for listening. Greatly appreciated. This is Ask Drone U.